In his former life, Li Fan had stumbled through the immortal slaying Grand Array's blockade by pure luck, stepping into the cultivation world for the first time as his lifespan was nearly exhausted. What greeted him then was an unbroken chain of towering mountain ranges and a grand city floating high in the sky. Yet, in this lifetime, upon crossing into the cultivation world, Li Fan found himself hovering above an immense, boundless ocean. Until this moment, he had never paid it much attention, simply assuming something had gone wrong during the teleportation. Only today, after witnessing the withered Songyun Sea and the awakening of the deep-sea pearl, did Li Fan finally grasp the truth. There had been no mistake. The location he arrived at after passing through the immortal slaying Grand Array was exactly the same. The sole difference lay in the timing of his arrival in the cultivation world. In his previous life, Li Fan had entered the cultivation world at the age of 85, during anchor year 65. This time, he had arrived at 40. Once the virtualization charging progress reached 100%, that was anchor year 20, a difference of 45 years. One arrival met with a vast sea, the other with rugged mountains. No wonder Li Fan had never considered this possibility. Without living through it firsthand, even if someone had warned him of such a cataclysmic shift in heaven and earth, he would likely have dismissed it as impossible. So Li Fan laughed, first at himself, for still clinging to his mortal way of thinking. Had he connected the strange signs Zhang Haobo once mentioned with the contrast between his two arrivals? He might have foreseen this monumental change much earlier. He laughed again because, at long last, he had caught sight of hope amid this disaster. In anchor year 50, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi had stormed into Great Xian, declaring they came from Lingtian City within the Tsongyan mountain range. Clearly, the drought must have ended before that time. The dried-up sea would one day give way to vibrant, life-filled mountains. It was now anchor year 34, the end was not far away. Waiting without hope had been the cruelest torment. Knowing the outcome made this seemingly endless catastrophe feel far less daunting. Li Fan steadied his emotions and returned to Tian Island. Seeing the mortals living in perpetual fear, numb with despair and reduced to endless prayer and prostration day and night, Li Fan sent his voice across the entire island, promising that the disaster would eventually pass. Receiving this assurance from the immortal master, the islanders were filled with joy, and their will to survive flared back to life. Li Fan himself entered seclusion, and once again took out the deep-sea pearl. He studied the blue heaven and earth curio. Could this be the glimmer of hope? He sent his divine sense into it, but the energy vanished instantly, like clay oxen sinking into the sea. Li Fan reflected quietly. It seems using it properly will demand considerable effort. Heaven and earth curios were crucial for establishing one's Tao foundation. Knowledge of how to locate and harness them was extraordinarily valuable, and redeeming such information through the Tianxian mirror required nearly 2,000 contribution points. Li Fan had no choice but to uncover its secrets through his own efforts. He experimented with countless approaches to activate it, channeling spiritual qi into it, nurturing it with divine sense, applying external pressure, even dripping his blood onto its surface, yet the deep-sea pearl remained completely unresponsive. Its immense reserves of water vapor refused to stir. Finally, a flash of insight struck him. He remembered that the 1,000 Mechanisms Jade Cosmos scripture included methods for perceiving and refining the energy mechanisms within natural spiritual treasures. He immediately activated the discernment of mechanisms' divine ability and focused it on the deep-sea pearl. A deep, profound blue radiance enveloped the pearl, ancient, vast, and teeming with vitality. Though small in size, the intricacy and power of its energy mechanisms surpassed those of every living being on Tian Island combined. It was merely dormant, quietly nurturing itself in a state of slumber, which made its true nature hard to detect without careful scrutiny. Li Fan cautiously extended his consciousness toward the pearl's energy mechanisms. The instant he made contact, his physical body seemed to disappear. It felt as though he had been suddenly lifted to the highest heavens, gazing down upon the sea below from a divine vantage point. The Tsongyan Sea had existed since ancient times, cradling countless lives, but one day, a will from the heavens descended, and so, the sea began to perish. Life granted by heaven, death decreed by heaven, this was the way of the Tao, the natural order. If heaven willed the sea to burn, the sea had no power to resist, yet it refused to surrender. Thus, Though one sea might die, another would be born. Li Fan snapped awake from that mysterious state. Before he could fully process the visions he had seen, a wave of overwhelming weakness crashed over him, nearly causing him to collapse. A quick self-examination left him stunned. A streak of white hair had appeared, and fine wrinkles now marked his face. All of this had happened in the brief moment he synchronized with the deep-sea pearl's energy mechanisms. When Li Fan next opened the Return to Truth panel, he drew in a sharp breath of cold air. In that single instant, his biological age had surged from 54 to 89, as though 35 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Li Fan thought to himself. No wonder almost no one in the ancient heavenly mechanism sect cultivated this technique. Simply touching the consciousness of a single sea consumed my lifespan at a terrifying rate. If my body hadn't warned me of the rapid depletion, I might have been completely assimilated by the sea's consciousness without even noticing. Who knows whether I could have activated Return to Truth in that state? Li Fan held the deep-sea pearl tightly, his expression uncertain. No, this can't be the correct way to control a heaven and earth curio. He knew he must have approached it wrongly. The human perception of time simply could not compare to that of the heavens, the earth, the mountains, or the seas. Even mighty cultivators who lived for thousands of years were mere mayflies in their eyes. To interact so recklessly with such a consciousness using a mortal mind could only lead to assimilation. So how, then, did one truly master a curio of heaven and earth? Days turned into weeks, yet Li Fan still hadn't discovered a way to use the deep-sea pearl. Meanwhile, the weather grew hotter by the day. As though determined to deliver a final, thorough purification of the Tsongyan Sea, the mortals on the island gradually lost even the strength to pray. Li Fan knew that if this continued, these people would likely perish just before the fiery calamity ended. To die on the eve of salvation would be a truly tragic fate. Restlessness began to gnaw at him, and distracting thoughts clouded his mind. In an effort to calm himself, he unconsciously began operating the long-neglected Xianhuang Heart Refinement Sutra. It had been a very long time since Li Fan intentionally cultivated the Xianhuang Heart Refinement Sutra. It offered no direct benefit to his cultivation progress, and even without active practice, it continued to operate slowly on its own, so he had long set it aside. Now, as the Heart Refinement Sutra flowed through him, the unease, fear, impatience, and other negative emotions swirling within Li Fan gradually dissolved, turning into nourishment that strengthened his Tao heart. With his mind once again calm and clear, Li Fan was suddenly struck by a powerful intuition. His opportunity for a breakthrough also lay within this deep-sea pearl. For several years, Li Fan had been stuck at the mid-stage Qi refinement realm, unable to advance even a single step. Even after cultivating both techniques to the mid-stage Qi refinement realm, he still could not find a path forward. Yet at this very moment, he suddenly sensed a faint opportunity for a breakthrough. He simply needed to merge his consciousness with that of the pearl, just as he had done before. Li Fan was fully aware of how dangerous this was. It was essentially no different from courting death. He immediately understood. It was the Xianhuang Heart Refinement Sutra. Perhaps running the Xianhuang Heart Refinement Sutra could help him resist assimilation by the sea's will. He sat cross-legged, simultaneously activating both the Thousand Mechanisms Jade Cosmos Scripture and the Xianhuang Heart Refinement Sutra. After hundreds of attempts, Li Fan gradually mastered the art of operating both techniques at once. His consciousness grew hazy, as though he had once again become the sea itself, silently watching the world unfold around him. Sunrises and moonsets, shifting constellations, drifting clouds and falling rain. Such scenes flashed by thousands of times faster, racing before Li Fan's eyes. A single thought seemed to stretch across centuries. An ancient, primordial, weathered presence slowly seeped into Li Fan's consciousness. He began to grow accustomed to viewing the world from the sea's perspective. Slowly, he started to forget that he was human. Just then, a cool, refreshing energy emerged. Like a mountain spring gently washing away the marks of time, Li Fan gradually regained his clarity. Though the years consumed from his lifespan were still many times greater than those lost during normal cultivation, human emotions such as joy and anger had become greatly diluted. His divine sense had been strengthened thousands of times. With the slightest effort, it easily enveloped the entire Taiyan island. His consciousness did not stop there. continuing to spread outward like ripples across water. One lifeless island after another appeared within Li Fan's mind. Through his divine sense, he saw a long-extinct volcano beneath one particular island, now stirring back to life under the influence of the ongoing disaster. He discovered several cultivators he had believed long dead, still clinging to life in hidden corners throughout the Tsongyan Sea. He witnessed countless secrets across the Tsongyan Sea that were normally concealed, only revealed during the sea's final moments. Yet none of these things mattered to him anymore. All greed had vanished from his heart. His divine sense swiftly withdrew. Mobilizing the deep-sea pearl, he began drawing the remaining water vapor from the air above the Tsongyan Sea, gathering it above Tian Island. As the rain finally began to fall, the people wept with joy. They embraced one another, rolling in the downpour. The heavy rain lasted for 1 full hour. When it ended, a faint layer of clouds lingered above Tian Island, refusing to disperse completely. This was Li Fan's doing. Every half-month, the clouds would spontaneously draw moisture from the deep-sea pearl to bring fresh rainfall to Tian Island, ensuring the survival of the mortals there. Having accomplished this, Li Fan gazed quietly at the sky. He had become the sea. Silently observing this world, he sensed the countless currents of aura flowing through heaven and earth and felt its will. 1 year, 2 years. The passage of time had ceased to hold meaning for Li Fan. The longer he gazed at the sky, the deeper his insights grew. One by one, his former beliefs were overturned. He had once thought the killing mechanisms that once filled heaven and earth across the Tsongyan Sea had gradually faded away. Now he understood that the killing intent of heaven and earth had never diminished. It remained present even now. Cultivators plundered the heavens and seas from the earth. Naturally, the heavenly Tao responded with killing mechanisms, yet the heavenly Tao did not act directly, for cultivators themselves were also part of the heavenly Tao. Appropriate laws naturally emerged in response, corresponding to the killing mechanisms of heaven and earth, such as the law of the exclusivity of immortal techniques. Or the scene Li Fan now beheld. Above the Tsongyan Sea, a crimson, translucent figure gazed downward with cold indifference. In its hand, a small flame danced and flickered without pause, relentlessly scorching and drying the Tsongyan Sea, and because it had looked at him, Li Fan understood exactly what it was in that instant, an arbiter of heaven and earth's soul, flame.